Welcome to a space where faith meets real life and growth gets uncomfortable. This isn't surface level motivation. It's truth that stretches you, challenges you, and asks you to show up differently. If you're ready to stop avoiding the work and start becoming who God's been calling you to be, stay.
There are moments when God does not rush, not because he is absent, but because he is intentional. This is not the season where he explains himself to you in advance. This is the season where he reveals himself in completion. You thought the year would end the same way it started, with unanswered prayers, with doors half open, with hope stretched thin. But God has a way of stepping in when your strength steps out. Right when you start counting losses, God starts counting down. Right when your voice gets tired from praying the same prayer, heaven gets quiet because the answer is already in motion. This last month is not ordinary time. It is appointed time, and what God is about to do will not need your defense or your justification. It will speak for itself. You've been asking why it had to take this long, why the waiting felt heavier than the blessing you were believing for. But God doesn't delay to punish. He delays to position. Some blessings cannot arrive early because they would break you instead of build you. Some miracles cannot show up mid-season because you weren't ready to stand in them yet. So God allowed the pressure, allowed the stretching, allowed the moment where you had to learn how to trust him without seeing him. Not because he wanted you to struggle, but because he wanted you rooted. What is coming in this final stretch needs someone who won't panic when it arrives, someone who won't self-sabotage when it finally unfolds. This is the month where what you couldn't force finally flows. You don't have the energy to chase anymore, and that's exactly why God can now release it. You were never meant to carry this by yourself. You were meant to surrender it. The silence you felt was not rejection. It was God clearing the room. He was removing distractions, misaligned relationships, expired expectations, and limiting versions of you that could not go into what he was about to release. You thought the silence meant nothing was happening, but silence is. Often, where God does his deepest work, you are standing at the edge of a shift that doesn't announce itself with noise, but with results. This is not a miracle that needs hype. This is the kind that shows up suddenly, unexpectedly, and undeniably. One moment you are managing, the next you are witnessing. One moment you are holding on by faith, the next you are holding evidence. God is not adjusting your life, he is interrupting it. He is not patching what broke, he is replacing it. And when he does, you won't have to explain why you're smiling differently, why you're walking lighter, why your prayers sound more confident. The change will answer the question. You've been faithful in the unseen, consistent in the unnoticed, obedient when it didn't make sense. And God does not forget seasons like that. Heaven keeps records, even when people overlook you. Every tear you wiped in private, every prayer you whispered when you didn't have strength to shout, every time you chose faith over fear, those moments stacked up. And now they are converging into one divine response. This is the month where accumulation turns into manifestation. What's about to happen will not look like luck. It will look like God. The timing will be too precise. The breakthrough will be too aligned. The restoration will be too complete. You'll look back and realize that if it had happened earlier, you wouldn't have recognized the magnitude of it. But now, after all you've endured, after all you've learned, after all you've survived, you'll know exactly who did this. And that's why God waited. Not to make you suffer, but to make him unmistakable. This is for the one who almost gave up this year, for the one who kept showing up even when nothing changed, for the one who smiled publicly but cried privately. God saw you, and he didn't just see you, he selected you. The pressure you felt was not because you were failing. It was because something was forming. Shifts don't come to stagnant places, they come to stretched ones. And you've been stretched, refined, and prepared. As this final month unfolds, don't measure it by the calendar. Measure it by expectation. Don't speak endings, speak evidence. Don't rehearse what went wrong. Prepare room for what's about to go right, because God specializes in last month miracles, the kind that turn a whole year around, the kind that make the waiting makes sense. The kind that don't just change circumstances, but change you. Delay is not denial, it is divine alignment. And sometimes God allows time to stretch, not because he is withholding, but because he is arranging. We are quick to assume that if it hasn't happened yet, it must not be coming. But God does not operate on panic timelines. He operates on purpose. What feels late to you is right on schedule for him. You counted the months and labeled them as loss, but heaven was counting them as preparation. Every delay carried instruction. Every pause refined your posture. Every unanswered prayer was actually being answered in layers you couldn't see yet. You thought delay meant you were forgotten, but delay often means you were trusted with more development. God knew that if he released it too early, you would have mishandled it, misrated, or minimized it. So he waited until your character could hold what your prayers were asking for. Some things don't arrive when you're excited. They arrive when you're stable. Some doors don't open when you're emotional. They open when you're anchored. God was not trying to frustrate you. He was trying to fortify you. There were moments you almost walked away. Moments you questioned your calling, your obedience, your worth. You wondered if you missed God or if God missed you. But the delay was never about your value. It was about alignment. Alignment with the right people, the right timing, the right version of you. God had to let certain connections fall apart because they would have contaminated the blessing. He had to let certain plans fail because they would have limited what he was building. What you called a setback was actually a setup for something that required precision. You prayed for growth, but growth requires pressure. You prayed for expansion, but expansion requires stretching. You prayed for elevation, but elevation requires separation. Delay was the space where God was quietly doing surgery on your soul, removing impatience, entitlement, fear, and control. You wanted answers, but God wanted surrender. You wanted movement, but God wanted maturity. Because when the blessing finally arrives, he doesn't want it to crush you, confuse you, or consume you. He wants it to confirm what he's already built inside you. There is a kind of delay that protects you from premature celebration. If it had happened when you first asked, you might have praised the opportunity instead of the God who provided it. You might have attached your identity to the outcome instead of the obedience that brought you there. So God waited until your worship was no longer conditional, until your faith was no longer fragile, until your trust was no longer tied to immediate results. Now when it comes, you won't lose yourself in it. You'll recognize him in it. This delay taught you how to keep showing out without applause. It taught you how to pray when nothing changed. It taught you how to trust God in the dark without needing a flashlight. And that kind of faith is rare. That kind of faith gets heaven's attention because anyone can shout when doors open. But it takes maturity to stay faithful when doors stay closed. God saw your consistency. He saw your obedience without guarantees. He saw your praise without proof. What you thought was God saying no was actually God saying not yet. And not yet is still a promise. The delay did not cancel the word spoken over your life. It calibrated it. It adjusted the environment so the miracle could survive. It positioned you so when the shift happens, it won't just bless you, it will stabilize you. Because alignment is more important than speed, and timing is more powerful than urgency. Now you're standing in a season where the delay is about to make sense, where the waiting is about to reveal wisdom, where the tears are about to turn into testimony. And when it happens, you'll realize God didn't waste a single moment. He used every pause to prepare you for what's next. What looks empty is often the very space God is preparing to fill. And we misunderstand emptiness because we associate it with loss instead of alignment. You walked into rooms that felt stripped, relationships that felt distant, plans that fell apart, and you assumed something went wrong. But emptiness is not always absence. Sometimes it is intention. God clears before he builds. He empties before he pours. He removes before he replaces. And the reason it feels uncomfortable is because you were never meant to live in the in-between. You were meant to trust him through it. You looked around and saw gaps where things used to be. Conversations stopped. Opportunities dried up. Familiar support disappeared. And you asked God why he would take away what you needed. But God never removes without purpose. What he removed could no longer support where he was taking you. What felt like subtraction was actually preparation. You thought you were being reduced, but you were being refined. God was creating room, not punishment. Because what he is about to place in your life needs space. Not clutter, clarity, not confusion. We panic when things go quiet. We rush to fill empty spaces with noise, with people, with distractions, with substitutes. But God is not intimidated by emptiness. He specializes in it. He spoke creation into a void. He formed purpose out of nothing. So when your life feels bare, when your plans feel paused, when your prayers feel unanswered, it doesn't mean God left the room. It means he's working where you can't interfere. Some preparations require silence, because if you knew what he was building, you would rush it, control it, or contaminate it with fear. There are seasons where God removes familiar comforts, so you can learn to lean on him instead of leaning on outcomes. You didn't lose those things because you failed. You released them because they expired. They served their purpose for the previous version of you, but they could not accompany you into the next one. God will never allow something to remain that will limit your growth, even if you are emotionally attached to it. Emptiness hurts because it exposes dependency, but it also reveals capacity. You see lack, God sees alignment. You see vacancy, God sees availability. You see nothing happening, God sees everything coming together. The reason it feels empty is because the old no longer fits and the new has not yet manifested. That space is holy ground. That pause is intentional. That silence is strategic. God is not ignoring you. He is preparing you. He's rearranging timing, positioning people, aligning resources, and strengthening you. So when the blessing arrives, it doesn't overwhelm you or collapse under pressure. This is why you couldn't replace what left with something similar. This is why substitutes never satisfied. This is why distractions didn't last. Because God is not interested in filling your life with replicas. He is preparing something specific. Something tailored, something that fits who you are becoming, not who you used to be. And anything that tries to occupy that space prematurely will feel forced, draining, and temporary. You've been interpreting emptiness as rejection, but it's actually invitation. An invitation to trust God when there's no evidence yet. An invitation to rest instead of striving. An invitation to let him do the heavy lifting without your interference. Preparation seasons are quiet seasons. They are slow seasons. They are uncomfortable seasons, but they are also powerful seasons because God is doing work that will speak louder later. If God allowed everything to remain full, you would never notice what needed to change. Emptiness reveals what you depended on more than him. It shows you where your security was misplaced. It teaches you how to pray differently, how to wait patiently, how to hope without control. And when you come out of this season, you won't be desperate for fulfillment. You'll be ready for stewardship. What's coming needs space to breathe. It needs room to grow. It needs a heart that is no longer crowded with fear, bitterness, or impatience. So God emptied the room. He cleared the stage. He dimmed the noise. Not to leave you exposed, but to prepare you properly. When the door opens, when the shift happens, when the blessing arrives, it will make sense why things had to be removed first. This is not the season to rush and fill gaps. This is the season to protect the space, to trust the process, to believe that God knows exactly what he's doing, even when you don't see it yet. What looks empty is not abandoned. It is reserved. It is marked. It is in preparation for something that will require exactly the room God just created. God has a pattern. And once you recognize it, you stop panicking when time starts running out. He does some of his greatest work when there's no margin left, when the clock is almost silent, when options look exhausted and explanations no longer work. The final stretch is not where God is rushed, it's where he is revealed. You see the end approaching and assume it means defeat, but God sees the end because he intends to redefine it. He waits until the last moment, not to scare you, but to show you that the outcome was never dependent on your control. You thought the window closed because nothing shifted early. You thought the opportunity passed because the calendar flipped too fast. But God does not need a long runway to perform a miracle. He needs alignment. He needs obedience. He needs trust. The reason he waits until the final stretch is because by then you've exhausted your strength, your strategies, and your backup plans. And when all that fades, what remains is pure dependence. That's the space where God moves freely because there's no confusion about who gets the glory. This is where faith becomes real. Not when you have time to fix it. Not when you have options to lean on, but when all you have left is God. You've been praying, planning, adjusting, and hoping something would break earlier. But God was watching how you handled the waiting. He was watching if you would still praise him without progress, if you would still obey him without clarity, if you would still trust him without reassurance. The final stretch exposes what you truly believe, not what you say. There's a reason God saves his best moves for the end. If he did it early, you might assume it was coincidence. You might think it was your timing, your connections, your effort. But when he does it late, when it defies logic and deadlines, when it interrupts endings and rewrites conclusions, there is no confusion. Everyone knows it was God. The miracle becomes a testimony because the timing itself preaches. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not disqualified. You are exactly where God planned you to be. The pressure you feel is not proof of failure. It's proof of proximity. Pressure increases when something is about to give way. Labor intensifies right before delivery. Resistance rises right before release. And what you are feeling right now is not the end of the story. It's the tension before transformation. God waits until the final stretch because he is not interested in partial surrender. He waits until there is no room left for doubt, until fear has no authority, until faith is the only option standing. And when he steps in, he doesn't negotiate with the timeline, he overrides it. He doesn't ask permission from the situation, he commands it. He doesn't explain himself, he reveals himself. You thought you ran out of time, but God was waiting for the right moment. Not the moment that felt comfortable to you, but the moment that would produce the greatest impact. Because some breakthroughs are not just for you, they are for everyone watching your life. They are proof that trusting God is not foolish, even when it looks risky. They are evidence that obedience still works, even when the odds are against you. This final stretch is where everything you've endured starts to make sense, where the waiting turns into wisdom, where the struggle turns into strength, where the delay turns into divine demonstration. God is not scrambling. Heaven is not nervous. The clock does not intimidate him. What feels like the last minute to you is the perfect moment to God. So don't quit now. Don't settle now. Don't lose your expectation now. You didn't come this far to stop at the edge. You didn't survive this much to miss the moment. The same God who carried you through the pressure is about to carry you into promise. And when he does, it will be clear that he saved his best move for the final stretch. Pressure is not sent to destroy you. It is allowed to reveal you. You keep asking why everything feels heavier right now, why the resistance increased, why the emotional weight feels unfamiliar. But pressure does not arrive randomly. Pressure shows up when something valuable is being formed. Nothing precious is produced without it. Diamonds don't form in comfort, they form in compression. And what you're feeling right now is not life collapsing, it is life concentrating. God is narrowing your focus because a shift requires clarity, not chaos. You thought pressure meant something was wrong, but pressure often means something is close. The enemy does not fight empty futures. Resistance increases when heaven has already scheduled release. That's why things intensified instead of eased. That's why old wounds tried to reopen. That's why doubt got louder. The pressure is proof that you are standing near a threshold. Thresholds are always guarded. If nothing significant was coming, there would be no reason to resist you this hard. Pressure exposes what you rely on. When everything is light, you can pretend you're strong. But when it gets heavy, you find out where your faith really lies. God allows pressure not to embarrass you, but to strengthen you. He is showing you what needs to mature, what needs to be surrendered, what needs to be trusted. Some things only surface under weight. Impatience shows up under pressure. Control issues show up under pressure. Fear shows up under pressure. And God doesn't expose these things to shame you. He exposes them to heal you. You've been carrying expectations that God never asked you to hold. You've been trying to manage outcomes that were never your responsibility. And pressure came to remind you that you were not created to be the source. You were created to be the vessel. Pressure pushes you back into position. It forces you to release what you can't carry and cling to what can carry you. That's why prayer feels different now. That's why worship feels deeper now. That's why distractions don't satisfy you anymore. Pressure has refined your appetite. Notice how the pressure didn't break you. It bent you, but it didn't destroy you. You cried, but you didn't quit. You questioned, but you didn't walk away. You felt weak, but you kept showing up. That's evident. Weak people collapse under pressure. Unprepared people retreat under pressure. But you stayed, you endured, you adapted. And that tells you something about what God has already built inside you. You are stronger than you think, and heaven knows it. Pressure also compresses time. It creates urgency. It sharpens awareness. It forces decision. God uses pressure to move you out of comfort zones that would have kept you stuck. If life stayed easy, you would never shift. If everything remained predictable, you would never stretch. Pressure disrupts patterns that no longer serve you, breaks cycles. It pushes you forward when comfort would have kept you stationary. Right now, you are in a season where pressure is doing its final work. The squeezing you feel is producing oil. The weight you feel is producing endurance. The resistance you feel is producing authority. When this season breaks open, you won't come out fragile. You'll come out fortified. You won't come out confused. You'll come out clear. You won't come out desperate. You'll come out discerning. Pressure is shaping your discernment so you don't misinterpret the blessing when it arrives. God trusts you with pressure because pressure proves capacity. He would not allow this level of intensity if you couldn't survive it. He would not permit this kind of stretching if you weren't built for expansion. The pressure is custom fitted to your calling. It's uncomfortable because growth always is. But it's intentional. Nothing about this season is accidental. Nothing about this wait is wasted. You're closer than you think. The pressure peaks right before the shift. Just like labor intensifies right before birth, pressure rises right before release. That's why quitting now would be tragic. That's why settling now would be premature. That's why losing faith now would be unnecessary. You are not being crushed. You are being completed. Let the pressure do its work. Don't fight it. Don't rush it. Don't numb it. Stay present. Stay prayerful. Stay open. Because when the pressure lifts, it won't just leave you relieved. It will leave you transformed. And you'll look back and realize the pressure wasn't the problem. It was the proof that something powerful was about to happen. You are still here for a reason. And that reason is bigger than survival. You didn't make it through by accident. You didn't endure because you were lucky. You survived because you were selected. When others quit, you stayed. When it got confusing, you remained faithful. When it hurt, you kept moving forward even if it was slow. Survival was not the reward, it was the requirement. God needed you alive, standing, breathing, believing, because what He planned for you demanded your presence on the other side of the storm. There were moments you should have been overwhelmed, moments you could have been broken, moments that could have taken you out emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, but something kept you, something covered you, something held you together when you were falling apart inside. That wasn't willpower, that wasn't strength, that was selection. God placed His hand on you in a way that made quitting impossible, even when giving up felt logical. You didn't just survive the fire, you came out marked by it. Selection doesn't always feel like favor. Sometimes it feels like isolation. Sometimes it feels like pressure. Sometimes it feels like responsibility you didn't ask for. You wondered why you had to carry so much while others seemed to move freely. You wondered why your lessons were harder, your delays longer, your battles heavier. But with selection comes refinement. God doesn't casually choose vessels for significant shifts. He prepares them intensely. What you endured wasn't random. It was targeted. Heaven was shaping you for impact, not comfort. You outlasted what was meant to break you. You outgrew what was meant to trap you. You walked through seasons that would have disqualified others. But instead of destroying you, they deepened you. God allowed you to see things others didn't, so you would develop discernment. He allowed you to feel pain others avoided, so you would develop compassion. He allowed you to wait longer, so you would develop endurance. Survival taught you lessons that comfort never could. Being selected means God trusted you with a story that would eventually strengthen someone else. Your wounds are not just personal, they are purposeful. Your tears were not wasted, they were watered into wisdom. The nights you thought were lonely were actually moments of divine intimacy where God was anchoring you deeper than applause ever could. You were learning how to hear him without noise, how to trust him without evidence, how to stand without validation. You didn't survive because you had all the answers. You survived because you kept choosing faith when fear had every reason to win. You kept showing up when your motivation was gone. You kept praying when your emotions were numb. That consistency caught heaven's attention. God doesn't overlook endurance. He honors it. And the fact that you are still here